All right, welcome. Here we are. I've got a special guest here. So Chris CL Furlong is a fellow YouTube creator. So Chris, you want to say hi and say hi to everybody here?
Hey folks, how you doing? Thanks for having me, Joe. I'm excited. I feel like we know each other so well, but we've never actually
Well,
spoken.
it's one of those things. I mean, you're putting out these 2 hour long videos, and I do feel like I know you in a way. So I'm really excited to kind of get to know you in person and get to go back and forth. 'Cause I think we do have actually quite a lot in common. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to get into it for sure. And yeah. Anyway, my first question for you is kind of an intro. Is like, on your YouTube channel, you do spend so much time just offering inspiration to people and really from a real perspective too. What I appreciate is not that everything is necessarily going perfectly in your life, but just
Mm.
about your attitude and responding to things. And then obviously your openness and willingness to share. But it's not about inspiration in different ways. And maybe some people talk about internal or external motivation, maybe being a similar kind of
Hmm.
idea where for some people, I really do think that inspiration is almost like a daily requirement. Like every day we are there. And I feel the same way. I'm looking on YouTube, I'm looking to get inspired, but in some ways, I also have kind of an intrinsic motivation, an internal motivation. And I'm wondering, you offer so much motivation to people on YouTube, but where does your motivation come from? Are you getting
No,
that externally? Is that an internal thing? Where
it's
are
a
you just
hundred
something you're
percent
seeking?
internal.
Or
It's
mm,
internal. It's funny because I was just doing an episode of my Get Wired podcast, literally just before this, probably about I don't know, 2 hours before this, and in that I was talking about what people don't tell you about reselling, which is it's a very generalized, I feel like it's probably been done 1,000 times, but in that I was talking about like when it comes to everything that you're doing, if you have some sense of purpose, passion, understanding of why you're doing it, what you're doing it for, naturally it becomes something which you don't have to convince yourself to do. Like it's like, so for me, I mean, previously, I mean, I'll give a bit more background for your audience or whatnot. So I've been doing reselling for five. Well, this is my fifth year, so it will be a total of 5 years in January 2026. But I left the 9 to 5 in the intention to actually start a podcast called Further Your Lifestyle because I wanted to help other people further their lifestyle. But I realized that, well, two things with that is one, I needed something to be able to back me up in terms of like, well, how am I doing that for myself? Right. So I needed some sense of credibility and showing what I'm doing in the loop, like while I'm doing it in the loop. So that's why I figured, oh, well, I need to start something. But secondly, I needed money. I literally quit my job and I just went cold turkey straight into it. And that was because I always wanted my own business. And during, the pandemic, so I previously worked for Accenture, which is the largest professional consulting service group in the world, actually. Really successful job. Like there was nothing wrong with the job. Loved it. Good money, good people, other than working crazy hours. But that was also because we were during a pandemic. So, we were in lockdown in Melbourne. Like we were in lockdown for like 278 days. So you had no difference between, work and life or what was what. So I basically got to the point where I was like, no, no, if I don't leave now and like actually start working on a dream, then I'm going to be 40 and I'm going to regret it. And I waited up and I remember speaking to my boss about, I was so nervous. And when I told him that, I'm done, like I got to go chase some dream and figure out what it is. And I get goosebumps talking about it. He actually was just like, you know what? I support you because I wish I did exactly what you're talking about, 20 years ago. And I was like, what the heck?
whoa,
It did take me
whoa.
6 months to get out, but like, because I wanted to do it right and I wanted to, support them because they had supported me. And to be honest, transparency, like I actually had long service leave up my sleeve, and they actually offered me I could take 2 years unpaid leave in the case that it didn't work out, that they would still bring me back. Um, which was
Wow,
obviously like I've got
that's
nothing to
amazing.
lose, obviously. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so I obviously didn't go back 2 years in, and I gave them a call and said, no, not coming back, thank you. And um
Whoa.
happy days. But so for me it was kind of like, well, I wanted to do this. So one, I didn't want to have to go work for someone else again. And secondly or thirdly, it's kind of like, well, I've got this huge big dream that I want to build a business that suits my lifestyle, and that will continue to change, but really so that I have the freedom of choice. And it really comes back down to good old Tim Ferriss, 4 Hour Work Week.
Sure.
I feel like he's screwed up or turned a whole bunch of people's lives upside down from his book. And I'm very motivated by that, motivated by Pat Flynn, and also motivated by the E-Myth Revisited. And that's how I've kind of built my mindset around my business,
Mhm.
with the intention that eventually I'll be doing less and it's paying me more. And to think I'm working just as much as I do now, but we're from when I started, we're doing, I think my first month we did $1,000. We're now averaging $30,000. So like we're 30x, but I've worked the same amount of time. So like you
Mhm.
can't really
Mhm.
complain about that. But yeah, my
Yep.
motivation is 100% internal, because if I don't do it, no one else is going to do it for me.
Yeah, wow. I feel that, man. I feel that wanting to avoid regret is a very similar motivation for me. And I kind of feel that
Yeah.
in you. I feel that you're waking up every day with purpose. And I feel that as
Mhm.
well. I'm so grateful that I'm in this life where, especially for me, having my business and my family so around me, I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is my purpose. And obviously it can feel like a lot. It can feel like a weight sometimes, but man, what an honor to be able to have challenges that you choose, you know?
Yeah, correct, right? And I think the other thing that I love is that, yeah, we get ourselves into these messes, whether it's chaos or whatnot. I like to call it controlled chaos because I know what I'm getting myself into before I make that decision, right? And even, good old Richard Branson, he inspired me back when I was a teenager, reading his book about, how he started Virgin Airways. And he had an opportunity that was so good. He said, you say yes, and then you figure it out, right? But you have to be willing to take on the consequences and the, accountability and the outcomes of that. Obviously, you work as hard as you can to avoid a bad outcome, which is why you're extra motivated. But if it aligns to where you want to be in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, then why wouldn't you do it? It really then just comes down to problem solving. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we basically start life with problem solving as a child, as you get into high school, mathematics, whatever. But that is the core of life. Everything that we do to learn is problem solving. But I think it's just too much for some people, which I get. Like, but I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's exciting because it's yours. You did it.
Yeah, speaking of problem solving, especially in your business, you have scaled. I would consider you maybe still an everything seller in a way, and just
Yeah.
the vast amount of categories that you sell. But you've scaled it up to such a degree that I have not seen very many people selling in as many categories as you are. And I can imagine that your days must look very different from day to day, as far as like, you're at one point you're processing scrap cables, and then you're
Yeah.
working on clothing or setting up clothing for your employees. So I'm
Yeah. I
wondering,
mean,
like,
it's
how have you found yourself in that? Is that I assume that's just looking for
yeah.
opportunities, but what's the direction? Was this the plan, or is this kind of where you
Yeah,
found
so
yourself in?
this
Or?
is the plan. So it wasn't the plan at the start. At the start, it was kind of like I needed to make money. So I used to do thrifting, or we call it op shopping here, with my mate. Every weekend, we used to go out and we used to just look for our own collectibles and stuff. Like we just did that as mates. I used to be his mentor, and then as he, got older, we basically just best mates now. And then when I left work, I was like, well, there's a lot of people doing this, and at the time, it's called flipping and reselling, and it was really just a lot of people doing the challenges of like, oh, I'm going to spend $50 and turn it into $1,000 or something. And so I went and binge watched all that and realized, oh, well, this is probably my quickest way to make money while trying to build a podcast and a brand. And I was like, stuff it, I'll just try and monetize that. And I had actually done some of that in the past. I didn't document any of that. I was doing it as a hobby. So I'm like, you know what? Let's go try it. And I started with everything. Like, so if I could make profit from it, I'll sell it. Like
Mhm.
most people do start that way to find your
Of
jam.
course, yeah.
But 2 years in, I realized, especially with thanks to the pandemic, um, everything became either hard to source because I couldn't keep up with the volume, but here it became, I guess, quite saturated. I mean, Australia is 30 million people. Everyone starts to think, oh, side hustle. How can we spend time? And the price when I started, to give some comparison, 5 years ago, I was buying books at op shops for 50 cents to a dollar. Now, on average, they're probably $4, right? And then postage, as a
Mm.
compare, postage when I started was about $7.68 to send just a small satchel, like like A4 size satchel. Now
Yep.
that's $10.60, right? So
Whoa! In
yeah,
5 years, it's over doubled. Shipping's
yeah,
over
yeah,
doubled.
yeah. Well, it's not over
Whoa!
double. Well, yeah, it almost
I guess
has,
in that
right? So
particular case, yeah.
yeah, yeah. But so from that, I was like, nah, this isn't going to work. I'm spending so much time trying to source. And at the time, I wasn't sourcing clothing because I didn't know clothing. It was scary.
Hmm.
And at the time, I was doing some business coaching with one of my mates. And, he was asking me about my understanding of how I valued money and all these different things. And, I went away and did an exercise and looked at the business from a different perspective. And I was like, okay, well, let's say if you could spend, $1, and every time you spent $1 you would get $40 back, how much money would you spend? And it's like, well, infinity, right? Like you would spend unlimited amounts. So I started running numbers on clothing, and in particular it was wholesale jeans, like Levi's jeans. And I was like, you know what, I'll spend, I think I spent like $1,500. I got like 45 kilos of jeans, and I'm like, I'll just figure it out. Like, I'm $1,500 deep. I mean, what could go wrong? So literally just looked at the
Wow.
inspiration from E-Myth Revisited and think, okay, so how do I learn this, understand it, and then I'll just give it to someone else to do, right? And pay someone in the team to do it.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And, for the last 2 years has been just incredible with that growth. But in the same period of time, I was listening and trying to figure out, okay, where do I want to take the business? And ideally, what I've done with the clothing, which is 75% of our business, I want to essentially do that for other categories, right? So that I can make that happen, in volume, get it right, get the process right, and then have someone else do it. Now, the clothing, sure, it's not perfect, but like I can go away and it gets done. And I figured the next one that I wanted to target was the e-waste, because that was the quickest opportunity to get into because of just the relationships that I had built with other people. But, we still do the consignment models with a lot of people. I
Hmm.
haven't op shopped intentionally for non-clothing for probably a couple of months now. Like if I go to an op shop, sure, I'm going to look for a flip. I'm going to look for something that's valuable, but I'm not prioritizing books. I'm not prioritizing media unless it's like sealed, or unless I know it's, going to be probably an ASP of $40 to $50 because I've got overheads.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I had to change that. And the e-waste has been the quickest way to do that. And now that I've got the warehouse, I was able to kind of like leverage that and say, hey, look, I'll just manage your whole e-waste service from that company. Kind of took it and, kind of bluffing it at the same time of like figuring it out as I go. But it's like, I have to, like, that's the only way to figure it out. I have to have it just coming through a brute force. And every time I get it, I get fix a friction point. So the next time it's a little quicker. Like I literally, just before this, I processed 250 kilos of media. Like that's what I've been doing this morning.
Wow. Way to
And
go.
so we had to split it up between like basically tapes versus discs, right? I get to keep anything in between, and then I sell that on their behalf. So, and we take a consignment model on that. But to do that,
Mhm.
it needs to be separated to go then further down the chain in terms of getting it recycled. And this is probably the third time we've done it because it hasn't come in the volume that I've wanted. But we've got 5 bins there, 4 bins, and from that, the last time we did it, there was mistakes made. This time, we've already improved the process a little bit. Now we know how to do it. It's so every time you do it, you get a little bit better. So ideally, I want to be able to think that we could process that, on a regular basis, and I want to prove that point so I can then go say to my client and say, "Hey, send more."
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Because if I can prove I can do it quicker than them, they're getting a better return. Then it's like, well, why wouldn't they? Right?
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
I have to be willing to run that. So that's what I'm learning, that process, and then eventually I'll have other people help with that process, like hire staff to do that or whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, purely our business is 75% clothing. It's probably 20% e-waste, and then the rest is like random. Yeah.
Got it. The consignment's interesting too. Is that something that you came up with, or did you have a model to start coming to these
Um,
people? I'm sure it's all kind of like you. I'm sure you kind of it's each
yeah.
contract. I assume is individual, but where'd that come from?
Yeah. So I mean, the way the way I got the e-waste was I had a friend that, because I've had an injury for the last year, but I used to do a lot of running, and we had met in the running space, and he reached out to me saying, "Oh, I know you sell stuff online. I've got a couple of video games. Do you want them?" And I'm like, it was like Zelda. I think it's the shooting one with the bow challenge on Wii.
For
And I
we,
was like,
yeah.
"Oh, yeah." I'm like, it's not really worth much. Like I said, like I can come get it if you've got a bit more, but otherwise, when I've got time, when I swing by. And he's like, "Oh, actually, no, I've got a whole box of other stuff. You want to come have a look?" I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I drove up there, and then I realized, hang on, this is not a residential address. This is a commercial place. And I rock up, and I'm like, oh, okay, hang on. Like, I didn't realize I was coming here. And he's like, oh yeah, he was the COO of this company. And
Oh, wow.
and I was like, oh, okay, like this is interesting. He gave me the tour. We talked, and he said, hey, look, maybe there's some stuff here that you want to trial. There's like he gave me this big box of video games, and some mum had donated, didn't want to have them disposed of incorrectly, so she saw their advertised because they're a recycling company, and they reached out to him, and a very small business, so he's really down to the detail, and he realized, no, this is worth something. So he put it to the side to me, and he said, hey, look, you can take this one for free, see if it works, sell it, you can take it all, and then if it works, come back and we'll see. I made like 2.5 grand from that. It was good.
Right on. Yeah.
And then I said, well, why don't we like ramp this up, and
Yeah.
we'll just do 50-50, right? I think that's fair, right? Yeah, I'll do the work, I know the knowledge, I'm storing it, and you guys just kind of like put aside these categories, no
Yeah.
questions asked. And so they were putting away, maybe 5 or 6 boxes. I was picking up every 6 weeks. And that's how it kind of started. And then we built the relationships. There was a few different staff turnovers. The guy I was connected with, he left and moved on to a different job. A few new people took over. So that's when I kind of like really I had to really manage that relationship. And that, thanks to my consulting days, is I called them up and said, hey, look, I'll come down, we'll have coffee, we'll talk about what can I do for you, how can I help you be successful in your new role. And because I think there was a lot of like, he didn't know who I was. No one had kind of handed over what I was doing. I was thinking, crap, if I lose this, like,
Yeah.
it's not
That's a
going to be
risky
good.
transition, I bet.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah,
it's all
yeah.
kind of just
And
about who you know, and
yeah,
yeah.
so I got in there on the forefront, and I said, look, I'm here to help you. What do you need to be successful? And we chatted, and that was before the warehouse. And then that progressed. We started getting more. We got the confidence, and then basically, I joked about that to him. Oh, I'm looking for a warehouse. My warehouse is now probably bigger than theirs, actually, and because they're more of a logistics side of the recycling. They just get stuff come and go, whereas they're not the one processing it. And I said,
Ooh,
oh, well,
that
when I
sounds like
have
an
the
interesting business.
yeah, it's
Is that an
reverse
interesting
logistics.
model? Do you think
Yeah, reverse
is that
logistics.
profitable? And yeah,
100%. Yeah, yeah. It's
yeah,
really good. Like, ideally, I would like to get into that more, but baby steps.
yeah.
And
Okay, sorry. Yeah,
I yeah, I joked to him, and I said, oh, well, when I have a warehouse, we'll talk some more business, right? And like, I joked about that in like last year, October, and then I got the warehouse in February. And literally the week I signed, I called him and I said, hey, dude, I got the warehouse. Like, let's talk business. I got some ideas. He said, yeah, come over. So I drove down there, and he was like, oh yeah, well, we'd like to ramp this up. And then I said, no, can I speak freely? I've got some other ideas. And he's like, sure. And I said, oh, well, how about I take over all this? I'll do this, do that. You just bring it to me. I'll manage it, because they're paying people to sort all this stuff, not with the intention of it needs to be sold. They don't have the know-how, right? They're just someone getting told you just have to sort this into different things. And I said, I reckon, there's stuff that we're slipping on. And he said, all right, let's trial it. We're actually at the end of the trial now. I have to send them the full report, but they get reports monthly anyway. But we literally doubled the revenue between the two of us. So we went from doing about 3,000 a month to about 7.5 per month,
yeah,
just in that. And that's not even, we're not even at full capacity, but we went from doing it every 6 weeks to I get deliveries every week. So it's just the speed to market as well, because we're not sitting on waiting on it. And I was
yeah,
processing all that stuff in multiple storage units, which was just not feasible.
yeah, yeah.
And because I had the space, I can get pallets. I've got my walkie stacker, which is like a portable forklift, and
Hmm.
yeah, that just speeds it up. So I've like invested a lot into it, like time. I'm paying for the walkie stacker, like all these things, because
Mhm.
I'm playing the long game. And if I can prove to them that it's worth their time, well, then how do we double down, right? How do we do more? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's the long short answer of that question.
No, I'm fascinated. And please let me know if I'm getting too nosy, but just to
No,
circle
no, no.
back a little bit, when you're doing like a 50-50, is that 50-50 on the top end or on profit, or how does
No,
that
it's
typically
pure
work?
profit. So, if we sold something for $100, fees, postage, let's say it's 20%. So, we're 80. So we're splitting the 80, 40, 40 each,
Okay,
basically.
got it.
Um,
Is there software that
and
can handle that, or do you have spreadsheets to handle that, or how
I
do you
just
handle
use
that?
a spreadsheet. I mean,
Okay.
my spreadsheet's pretty pretty detailed. But yeah, if I didn't have my spreadsheet, it would be pretty gnarly to track because
Yeah.
we're getting so much. Well, it's not so. Now we've kind of got a better model where we've got a lot of more customer bases that buy certain things, so it kind of gets bundled opposed to individual lots. But I track everything down to, the lot, and then it gets skewed. So for instance, if we had 250 kilos come in, that's tagged to what lot that came from. And then when it's broken down into bundles or, different item listings, they've all got a skew that relate back to that lot. So I can say, oh, the stuff that you guys delivered last week, that's generated, we can say that's generated $500 kind of thing. So we can kind of track where the bits and bobs are. We then
Yeah.
track it down on a category level as well, actually subcategories. So it might be electronics, and then it will be like a subcategory of like whether it's phones, iPads, laptops, parts, all that kind of stuff, because all that is really valuable information. And I've got it tracked down of, what's our bestseller, cameras, and then the next level I would like to get to, which just haven't spent the time, is getting it down to the brands or models, because then you can start to then say to them, hey, look, this is the stuff that sells. So can we just like find where we can buy like a ton of it?
Yeah.
Because there is that available, but you don't
Mhm.
have the data to back it up. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be useful for both of you to be able to say, hey, let's find for both of us to go try to find this kind
Yeah.
of inventory. That is so interesting, man. Man, I love that. And you've got another company kind of on your side to kind of,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, like, and we're all
you're like
trying
you're
to
growing
achieve the same
together.
thing, right? Like, I mean, we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep things out of, landfill at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very common buzz thing at the moment. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's what people want to hear, right? And trying to get that message across. And I'm really trying to reframe that. Yeah, sure, I'm a reseller, but every business is a reselling business. Like, I mean, even down to your retail stores, right? I mean, they're buying low, or they're building it, manufacturing it small at a small cost, and then just selling at a higher price. So I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
get out of this reseller mindset, because people get boxed in, and it's like, we're building a business, right? Like, it's not going to be, oh yeah, we have 90% margin. Like, we want to do volume. We're delivering a service, lots of different ways of revenue coming through. We're probably only averaging about 15-17% net, but I've been so aggressive in just putting more staff on or investing in this, because
Yeah.
if I have to spend 100 grand like in additional capital over 5 years, but it means in 5 years time that means we're doing 10x. It's like, why?
Yeah.
You would hindsight it and think, I should have doubled it, right? But like, it's not about that. I'm trying to be like, oh, you have to be massive. And I know you've spoken about this. It's like, you don't have to do that, right? You really don't. Like, you can have a really beautiful business as an individual, or as a family, or as a couple, or whatever. Um, and that's why for me, I'm like, my goal is like, I want to have a team of people. I want to build this beyond myself. But that's what it looks like at the bottom, right? It's risky, it's scary, it's a lot of upfront stuff. I mean, I could play it out longer, but if I know that I can spend this and it's going to get us quicker by 6 months, it's like, why not? It's going to get me closer to where I want to be, right? I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
standard business. I mean, in my head, but I'm not saying it's not common sense, but like, I mean, you think of like, all these big companies, like even Uber, I think they only profited for the first time within the last 5 years, right? Like, it's, and not
Mm-hmm.
comparing myself to Uber, but you get my point, right?
And that, I think it has a big correlation to how big your dreams are. Is often
Yeah,
how willing and how long are you willing to eat dirt and
yeah,
not take the profit before you.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you've watched Mike Amby's on YouTube, but
No, I haven't.
he's an American guy, and he does lawn care, but now he's franchised. He's a younger guy
Okay.
too, really,
Yeah.
yeah, impressively successful. And he has really clarified the language of growth mode and profit mode being very separate stages in business. And he talks a lot about how growth sucks profit, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
almost impossible to be focused on both at the same time.
Correct.
And
100%. I know.
yeah,
Like,
man, and you're
it's,
just
yeah.
so in growth mode right now, my man. Like
Yeah.
you're so hard in growth mode.
And look, I'm not going to lie, like, it's probably that's probably the biggest mental battle. One, because I'm so transparent about it. So the amount of hit back I get, because it's like, you're not even making a standard salary and stuff like that. And I know that, like, you don't have to tell me, but people think in their books it's not worth it. And it isn't worth it. If you were doing this every year and that's the standard you're doing, it's 100% not worth it. But I'm doing it in the sense of like, well, I'm not doing this for a 1 year kind of like I want to make an extra 10 grand. I'm doing it. This is going to change my life. And,
Yeah.
I'm only 30, I'm not even 34. So like, I'm just getting started, right? I
Too young.
mean,
Yeah. Totally.
like
Yeah.
we've just hit over, we're on $760,000 since we started, not completely 5 years yet. And
Nice.
so I think, and half of that, like we've done 360,000 in the last 12 months. We've done
Yeah.
half of that in the last year of the 5 years, right? So imagine what I can do in the next 5 years,
Yeah.
right? With the intention, because if it means like it takes me another 4 or 5 years to get this really beautiful, and when I say beautiful, my idea of beautiful would be like I'm netting $250,000 a year, and I'm basically director or CEO kind of thing, opposed to the guy that's doing everything. Um, that would be beautiful, right? To be 40 and you got 250,000 and you're really just the director and strategy. I think that's fair game. But at the same time, I would expect it to be more than that. But that's kind of like I've always had a dream to just say like, oh, I'd love to be earning $250,000 in my own business. I mean, that's wild, but it's a long way to go.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, yeah. I can tell you got that long-term mindset. Do you think in terms of setting long-term goals, or as far as I can tell that you're definitely in that kind of growth and grind mindset? Do you have like a dream, maybe in 5 or 10 years, if everything goes well, is there going to be a point where you are going to be able to take a step back or be able to take a deep breath, or
Yeah.
where is the
I haven't
belief in
I
yourself
haven't
settling in?
kind of Yeah, I haven't kind of put it to like down to exactly when or how, but like, I knew
Mm,
I wanted a warehouse 2 years ago, and the
yeah,
idea I actually wanted it last financial year. So our financial year finishes in June, which is this month. But it didn't go to plan, and then I was like, you know what, we'll pivot, and I'll just suck it up and make it work in the storage units. And then this opportunity came, and I'm like, stuff it, let's do it. But my goal has always been to continue to move me out of the business, but like when I say move myself out of the business, I want to be more on the business and not in the business.
yeah,
Because I don't want to like walk away from this. Like that's not my intention. But it's kind of like now I know, now that I've got the warehouse, we've been in here for 6 months in a month's time, and I'm looking at, well, we've signed a 3-year lease plus the option of two. So we're here for 3 years minimum.
yeah,
Right. So
yeah,
my current goal now is like, okay, how do I, especially this first year, is how do I get the business to a really good foundation that we're consistent, we're covering all overheads consistently without worry. And then to do that, we have to ramp up revenue streams, which is why I've taken on more of the e-waste and doing a bit more wholesale and different things, because I've got to push, I've got to have cash flow turnover quickly. And
yeah,
then while that's working, it's like I have to think, okay, then, but how at the same time are we building up core processes that are actually going to be substantially, doing the main stuff? Like our clothing does the majority of it. The e-waste is now all the
mm,
gravy, right? So that's the way I look at it. So I know that, well, in 5 years, I either want to be in the option, and this is scary to say because I don't think I've really said it out loud. I either want to be in the option to buy this warehouse, like, so rather than release, is just say, hey, I'll just buy it off you, or that we have to go to somewhere bigger. Ideally, the perfect situation is both, right? But that's in 5 years. That's really scary to think about, but like that's where I'm working towards, because then I get to take ownership. In that point, if you own something, the overhead just drops, right? Like, I mean, yeah, sure, you're going to have a debt or mortgage or whatever lease on the with the bank, but it's different, right? Because if I own this, then I can make changes, or I can go somewhere else, and then I can lease this out, and it becomes a business asset, right? So I haven't gone into the particulars. I haven't necessarily said, oh, by this date, this is when I don't want to be doing this anymore, but I'm just letting it flow as it happens, because it's not linear. Like, it changes so quick. Like, I'm
yeah,
working on a
of
couple of
course. Yeah,
opportunities at the moment, which, they're big deals. And it's like, well, I'm not ready to do that. But it's like, I know they're there. So it's like, you know, there's stuff that I hadn't even thought about. I mean, sure, you do, you dream of it, but you don't expect it to happen. And then it's like, well, you don't want to overreach at the same time. So then it motivates you to work a bit harder because you know, like, oh no, there's that opportunity's there. We just have to be, sensible about taking it, not just saying yes and figuring it out blindly, because it's, it's more capital and things like that. But yeah, so that to answer your question, it's, I look at it as like, well, I'm happy to keep doing this for 5, 10 years. Like I even say 20 years, because 20 years, I'm mid 50s, right? I mean, but it'd be a different situation, because what I talk about now, when I'm there, it's not even going to be it's going to be so minute, right? Like so I'm not too stressed about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised to hear you say that clothing is the bulk of your sales. You said maybe you'd estimate maybe 70% clothing and 20% electronics.
Mhm.
Maybe that's because I mostly see you handling a lot of the electronics in the videos. Is that because your employees are handling a lot of the clothing side of
Yeah,
things,
correct.
right?
Yeah. So and that was the model that we took, was if I can get that process right, then I can just pay other people to do it. So like we outsource the washing. I've got I've got 2 photographers that do the clothing. There's still a fair bit of it that I do because I love it. Like I love
Yeah.
sorting through the clothing and seeing what we're going to sell, and I need to know that to make sure we are meeting the expectations. But I've just got another new hire starting in July, and their role is going to be doing more of me. So they'll be doing all the shipping, and then having them take a bit more ownership in managing the warehouse a bit, which is scary. Like that's going to be a let go issue for me. But yeah, no, the clothing is like, I've got the clothing now working as, and I'm just looking it up on my sheet. I'll bring this up. I've got the clothing going at, let's see. So it loads while I'm doing this. Yes, I think it's 75%. We're sitting at, hang on,
I
it's
love that
just,
you can
yeah.
just
So,
pull these
okay.
numbers up so quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the stuff I love. So, for instance, if I look at this year, when I say this year, it's from basically July to June, because I'm talking fiscal. So we've done a total of, we're sitting on 353,000 for the last 12 months. And of that, the clothing is 259,000.
Wow. Awesome. Wow. That's fantastic, man. That is so cool. So
So
I've
it's,
had it.
yeah.
No, go ahead. Yeah, please.
No, so like it's been really lucrative. I actually realized I didn't have my formula updated properly with the percentage. So the clothing
Yeah.
is 73.4%, and
Wow.
the electronics is I'm just updating this because I added an extra field, but the electronics is 15%. And then the rest is everything else.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure. You were so close to your estimates. I think like, you
Yeah,
definitely got a good
yeah. No,
handle
no,
on
I
things.
look at
Yeah.
my numbers all the time.
Yeah. Man, so when we had employees, my wife and I, we've run 2 separate businesses: our restaurant and food carts, then the
Mhm.
eBay business now. Something I always struggled with conceptually, and then again in reality, was the problems with an hourly wage model.
Yeah.
So, and it's because it just from the very beginning, it misaligns the incentives between the employees
Yeah.
and the owners, right? Where their job now becomes just to not get too tired and basically just to get through the day and to
Yeah.
not try to check the clock as little as possible. So maybe go for the fun jobs or the jobs that pass the time the
Yeah.
quickest. But it's because they're humans too, and so we all respond to incentives. And the other problem with the hourly wage model is that I really had a hard time affording to pay the people that really were phenomenal. That you do have an employee that is
Yeah.
50% or even 100% more efficient in some tasks, but you can't always pay them twice the hourly wage. And so that can
Yeah.
be resentment because they know that and they're looking at their coworker and they're like, why am I working so hard? Why am I breaking my back? Maybe I
Yeah.
should slow down. And it's hard. And because I get there, because I've been
Yeah.
there. I've had so many jobs up until I started my own businesses. So yeah, what's your
Yeah.
approach to that? How do you handle that stuff?
I mean, for me, I mean, at the moment, it's, originally because so like there's two components of my business where I pay people. So there's the stuff onshore, like here in the warehouse, and then I outsource my listings to the Philippines. And he's actually my business partner there, and we have a listing service as well. And so with that, he's not actually, in terms of, he's not an actual staff member of the team. He's just, I just request their services, they send me an invoice in that
Mhm.
way. So but it works out, they're getting paid $1.50 Australian per listing, which is quite high. especially for them. Like the guy's making heaps of good dollars because it's the exchange rate with the Philippines. But if I was to compare that to here, it's like, no, I mean, someone else has said to me, yeah, sure, they would do it, but it works out to be still about $30 an hour, which is what I'm paying. It's about $32 to my photographers per hour. And one of them averages about 17 per hour. The other averages about 10 per hour. But two different individuals from different backgrounds, different experiences. One of them's a bit more intentional with detail. The other one's kind of just, real casual, just happy to come and help and whatever. And so the way I've kind of looked at it from a different perspective is, yeah, the hourly rate, it kind of screws up. But if their intention is long term, I win because they're going to get better, right? And the way I continuously try and encourage my team, especially those that are here for a longer term, is it's like, okay, your job is yet obviously to get your task done, but improve your process. Like if you think you can do it better, do it better, right? And giving them that freedom. But sometimes it's very hard to get that mentality because it's not theirs, right? But if you say, well, no, you own this, right? All of a sudden, if they can enjoy it and they can turn it into something that they love, it's like, oh, I used to do this. It used to take me 1 minute to do this. Now I can do it in 45 seconds. All of a sudden it becomes, gamified in that sense. Now, that's not necessarily happening the way I want, but since starting, like my best photographer, yeah, they were doing 10 per hour. Now they average about 17. It also depends on what we're doing. Like if it's big, heavy jackets, that's going to be really slow. But if it's like t-shirts, well, it's easy stuff. But helping them understand, it's like, I'm not here to tell you that you have to get this much done so quickly, because quality is the most important thing. But it's like, how do you do your process, or the repetitive steps without having extra friction points? Or if something annoys you, how do we fix that? How do I make your life easier to do your job? Or how do you make your life easier to do your job? So that's really been the mentality there. But other times, sometimes I look at it like, well, if there's a task for me, for instance, doing the media bins, right? And I'm starting to have someone else start to help with that. It's not worth my time to do it, right? Because I'm going to be worth about $100 an hour, whereas if I'm paying someone $30, right, and they're going to do it probably just about the same time as I'm going to do it because they're following a process, it's kind of like, well, I'm gaining back 3 times for my time, right? So in that sense, it's kind of like it's leverage in that sense, and it doesn't really come down to a matter of like per piece, because you just got to get to an outcome. Whereas when it is a per piece, I think there is an incentive there, but I think they're going to cap out anyway. Like even if I said to them, like, I'll give you $30 per piece of clothing you do, they're going to go rush, right? And then, it's probably not actually going to get you the results you want. So it's got to be in the middle. And the way I look at it is, it's like, well, one, are you paying them fairly in general, right? So making sure that, they're not getting the minimum wage, they're getting what they deserve, and that they've got an environment where they're comfortable. And my best photographer, they love coffee, so I got a coffee machine. They can have as much coffee as they want when they want. I don't care, right? And I know that sounds, that's just, it's a bit pathetic, but it's like, no, like that stuff changes.
It's a long way.
It's like when I was working long hours, I was working 15-hour days in the office, and they're like, if you need dinner, if you need lunch, we just need you to stay back, we'll get it for you. And you're like, sweet. Like those little things just make you happy and you push through. Or oh, you need a cab home? Yeah, sure. Or, got to the point where I had to do 5 days in the city. So I was like, why don't I just stay in the city rather than me catch a cab home? And they're like, sure. And it worked out cheaper anyway. So they were happy. I was happy. And, so it's a bigger play on that. You've got to look after your people, right? And I don't have a huge experience in this role, but, I've managed a team before, and you want them to be satisfied. You want them to be motivated with those intrinsic things, those things that are so little, but they have such a big result. I used to, when we were working at the storage units, we couldn't have a coffee machine there because, like, not allowed to leave things on like that in the one we were in. So if they, if I know that they're getting frustrated or something's like, do you want a coffee? And I'll just go down to the local shop, get coffee, whatever, right? Because I want them to be motivated. I want them to be happy, because at the end of the day, they're the most important piece of the puzzle, right? Because if they're not photographing and with quality, we've got crap listings, right?
Yeah. Man, it's so hard, man. I'm thinking you're doing so many things right now, and I see you so comfortable in that managerial side, but you also are so hands-on in the business at the time,
Mhm.
and because you're growing it, it is not at the stage where it needs to be. Like you can't just settle into that managerial role yet, and
The
yeah, it's
answer to
fun to
that,
watch, man.
like, thank you. I appreciate the way I look at that is I'm happy but not satisfied.
Yeah. Well, that's probably going to be a lifetime. I see that.
Yeah.
I get that, but I appreciate it, man. I feel the same way. Yeah, I feel like I'm the happiest guy in the world, but like I kind of still want more. I guess
Yeah.
it sounds selfish, you know,
It
in
never
a way,
ends,
but I
right?
do.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. There's just so many levels. I see it. Yeah, right now I'm just trying to hit that first level of financial security, but then what, right? Like then you can really start to
Yeah,
make a
I know.
difference.
And like
Like
I
that,
was
then
joking
that's
with my partner. I said, like we recently just got engaged. We plan to get married this year, and I've just
yeah,
sold my
congrats.
investment property, thank you, to buy our own house this year. And I said to him, I said, oh, we've been working towards these things for a while, with the business and stuff. I said, once we've got our house and all that, it's like, what's the next thing we're working towards, like, and then it's like, okay, well, then it's
Mm,
that financial freedom. Like, how do we get cash reserves, start an investments together, or
mm,
other little
mm.
businesses or whatever. And I'm excited for that because it's, I feel like getting to the house part, that's more stressful, right? Because, you have to have a certain deposit and all that stuff. And, you have to grind to that.
Yeah, yeah.
And after that, if we can do it right, then it's kind of like, okay, now we actually get to set ourselves up for the rest of our life, right?
Yeah.
And that then you just get started, right? Like, so, yeah, I'm excited for that.
Oh, it's so exciting. Home ownership is not for everybody, and I definitely don't recommend it. Similar to business ownership, but for the right person, like just the ability to know that the space is mine, I can take the time to
Mhm.
put stuff on the walls, and it's going to be there until I want to take it down. And I think I'm sure you're feeling that with the warehouse. I bet you dream about that warehouse. I bet
So,
you
so
spend
good.
so much hours in there. Yeah, it's amazing, right?
So good. And like, there's things that sure I would have wanted things differently, but it's to find the perfect piece, it just doesn't exist. And obviously there's certain things I can't do because I'm leasing it, but you're pretty much allowed to do anything because anything you change, you just got to make it back to normal when you leave. And that's why in my book, it's like, well, if I get to the point where I'm making big changes and it's going to be expensive to get it back to normal, it's like I'd probably be better off to just kind of say, well, how do I, keep it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
In
And I
that
see because
sense.
didn't you
But
invest a lot on your shelving and like you said, your
yeah,
lister and
like
all that? So that was a lot, big
it's
investment, right?
like I've gone pretty hardcore on it because I looked at it like, well, moving in long term again, like I know, like what I know here, I'm for a minimum of 3 years, right? And while the warehouse is empty, that's the best time to put stuff in, right? Because I mean, sure,
Mm,
let's say in 2 years' time, I realize I need more pallet racking. Sure, you're gonna make it work, but I'm like, it cost me $1,500, and I'm like, it's going to just make my life easier in the next 1 to 3 years to say yes to something because all of a sudden it's there. The walkie
mm,
stacker cost me, like $450 a month. It's going to be cheaper than that because I just signed a 5 year lease on one. But it's the same thing. At the start, it's like, oh, is it going to really be worth? Man, I use that thing daily now, and it just
mm,
saves with
mm.
lifting stuff. And over time, I'm going to use that more. Right at the start, it's very minimal, but then it's going to be like this. So
Wow.
knowing that, now that they say, oh, they said to me, it's like, oh, well, can you receive pallets? And I said, oh, and I'm like, yeah, we'll figure it out, right? And I literally just got on the phone and went and hired the thing for the 3 month trial, and now it's like this is the best thing ever, right?
Mm, hmm.
And you want to, like, this is, and I'm not saying to people be stupid about money, like just go spend it, but if it's going to give you that return on investment or it gives you the ability to get you closer to where you want to be, I mean, you have to run the numbers, you have to like do the crunching, but it's
Yeah.
justifiable because you'll just
Yeah.
save so much time, and time is money.
Totally. And man, and the problems that you can just throw money and solve, if that's all it takes, like the older I get, the more grateful I am. Like if it's just a money problem, I can
Yeah,
handle that. It like the
yeah,
more complicated problems are the ones that keep me up at night these days.
yeah,
But like,
correct.
man, I don't remember where I heard that. I think it was on some episode from Ramit Sethi. He's got a YouTube
Oh
channel called
yeah.
I'll Teach You to Be Rich. And some woman who was on the couples version of the Money for Couples was saying that her dad gave her this advice of essentially, if it's a money problem, it's not really a problem. And that a little
Yeah.
bit comes from privilege, but at the same time, like, once you have figured out the engine to make money, even if you don't have the money now, it's not necessarily a problem. It's just a matter of more. or maybe or less in other ways, right? But money problems are almost the easiest thing at a certain point,
Yeah.
especially in business. If it's just a matter of getting the right tool, and then it unlocks this whole other part of business.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, those are the harder problems, are the things where you're doing stuff that's never been done before, which is so much of entrepreneurship. That's hard.
And like trying to improve the processes, right? So at the moment, I'm trying to work out, okay, we know this much media stuff's coming in. We have to wait. We have to do this. It's like there has to be a quicker way to do this, right? So I've been looking at like pallet scales and stuff like that because it will literally save us, putting into manual boxes, and it will also, remove manual labor for some of my staff. But do I have the space to have that pallet scale? Because it's, really it's 1200 by 1200 and it weighs 85 kilos and you can't have it on wheels. And so I'm like, oh, that's not going to work because it'll be in the way for other things. So like just trying to find solutions which make everything better, not just for me, but if I'm paying someone, I want their life to be easy and I don't want them hurting their back and, all these different things. So you have to look at it from that perspective. And also I don't want to cut corners, right? Because that's not how you build a good business. If you cut corners, you build it on something which is always going to be tilted. And then when it really comes to the point where like you can't do that anymore, you will. It's like Jenga, right? You'll pull that out and everything will collapse. I've got people saying, "Oh, why don't you just do more cash jobs, or why don't you just pay someone off the books, or And it's like, well, that's not how you build a good business, right? Like you do what's right. And if that's the cost to do the business, you then have to figure out how to make that work. It's like when I outsourced my washing, I think we spent like, oh, geez, it's probably $700 a week in washing, right? Because we have to wash all the clothing before it's listed. That is eBay's policy. You can't sleep on that. And,
Yep.
people are like, oh, it's so much. It put my cost of good up to like $12, $15 sometimes. And it's like, well, but that's the cost of doing business, right? So
Yep.
I either have to get my clothing down cheaper, or I have to, I could bring the washing in-house, but that's not feasible at this point, short term. So it's kind of like, how do I bring other revenue streams in that help average
Yeah.
that cost out, right? And that's what I've done.
Man,
It's
that's where my mind first went when I heard that. When you mentioned how much laundry was in one of the previous episodes, I was like, man, I'm sure you've thought of it, but getting
yeah,
plumbing in, bringing in the
yeah,
water heater, I mean, all that would pay
yeah.
for itself so quick at that kind of scale.
It would,
That's
but
hard.
like it's one of those things where like to do that, it's probably going to cost a minimum for just like two or three machines with all of it. It'd be a minimum of $5,000, if not more. It'd probably blow out to be higher. And then it's kind of like, well, if you're going to do it, you kind of want to not have enough that just lasts you for a year. You want to have it so that as we scale, because then you're going to have to have someone come out and do it again, right? And then just the call out fees for like, plumbers, electricians, and all this, right? So it's kind of like, well, what I figured was for the first year, as we get the process right to see what we do, we keep outsourcing it. My laundry lady was still in the same area, so she's able to do it. I told her we'll probably start to ramp up. She's happy. Um, when I bring on my new staff member, and hopefully we'll be increasing our listings, which means we're increasing our volume of washing, that's when I'll be able to have a better data play of like, okay, is it better to do it in-house, right? But the same thing, it's like, it's also nice to just not think about it,
Of
right?
course.
That convenience
Yeah.
price, because, what if the machine just stops working? Now I have to fix
Yeah.
that, like have it. Whereas,
Mhm.
if I'm paying another business, like they're responsible to get that done, right? And they'll probably go to the laundromat and just get it done. I don't have time to be doing that. I can't be paying my staff to do that either, right?
No, no.
So there is a premium cost to it, but at the same time, at the moment, for the amount, like we're not really doing a lot. Like we process 800 pieces of clothing a month, which, yeah, it's a lot, but it's like, if we're doing 10x that, that's when you'd want to outsource it to like a huge commercial washer anyway. So
Yep.
in the long run, it probably is still going to land to outsource it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, man. I almost instantly regretted it when I brought it up because it's not like you don't have enough things on your plate right now. I'm like, have you
Yeah,
considered
but
washing
yeah,
the clothes yourself too? You should do more work. I'm like, no, what am I
it's
talking
and
about?
it's passive. Like you could literally have someone come in, spend an hour, get it all going, and it's 45-minute cycle, whatever, and then they go do 45 minutes of photos, and then it creates that break. But at the same time, if someone gets in the zone of photoing, like they'll just keep going, right? And you don't want to break that zoning if they love it. So yeah, short term, I still think that's what I'm doing. I'll reevaluate after a year, but as we increase, I still think it's it's going to be worth it from a, economies of scale to just outsource it, because it'll probably actually get cheaper because you can go commercial. And I mean, we cold wash everything. We're not doing special attention or anything like that. We're following the tags, but we're not trying to get out stains and stuff, because majority of the stuff we don't list that's dodgy. It's only vintage stuff that maybe has a bit of detail to it in that sense. But it costs extra to focus on that. And if you're processing that much volume, if I'm selling a vintage piece and it's got stained or whatever, that's part of the character. Sure, I might not get $70 for it, but I'm going to get $50 for it because it's part of it. But you're never going to get top dollar for like a mass saturated Nike tee. You're not going to demand $20-$30 for it if it's got stains over it. We just don't even process it. Like, it's not even worth our time. So that's where it is, because it is still worth it to wash it.
Got it. Wow, awesome. Man, I've been having so much fun talking to you. There's one more, and I don't want to take too much of your time. I want to respect your time here. So I think we want to keep it to around an hour. So we're getting towards the end. One more topic I really wanted to talk with you about, though, just a little bit maybe, is your running. I saw you have a lot of running content. I've watched some of your running content, and even looked. I think you did an ultra at one point. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'd love to hear a little bit about what drew you to such a difficult sport, and a little bit about your experiences, maybe running ultras, if there's anything that's kind of stuck with you afterwards. So I've signed up for an ultra, but DNF.
Yep.
I've done a couple of marathons, but I'd love to. It's definitely one day. I'm definitely gonna at least attempt another one. So.
And I'll apologize because this makes me emotional. So if I do get emotional, and I don't expect to get emotional, but I can feel it already. So running is like, it is my pride, joy, and passion. I haven't been able to run for the last year because I had an injury with my ankle, and I'm actually technically allowed to start again, but I've been too scared because I don't want to have to go through that process again. But to me, originally I started running, this is going back probably 2015, might be a bit earlier. I was a big boy, and I had to lose weight, and I got to the point where I'll start doing some running because cardio was the quickest way to get it down, and to the point where I lost 22.5 kilos in 6 months. Like, I went pretty wild. I mean, that was with I removed sugar and everything. And then I started running, and I realized, hey, this is like, I've got a bit of an addictive personality, and I love the stats. So I did a run, and I'm like, okay, that was good. And it's like, maybe the next time I can do it a bit faster, right? And so it became like competing against myself, and eventually it just got to the point where it's like, this is great, I love it, and I'm able to do it better every time, which is not the best way to learn to run, because that's how you hurt yourself. But that was okay. And then when I met Carla, my partner, she was a runner as well, and she said, "Oh, I'm going to go do this event," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to go do this event too because I like this girl," like, which she didn't really know at the time, right? But I'm like, "Sure, I can do it." So signed up for I think it was it was my first 15K, which to me was like this is wild, because I was only doing like 5Ks a week, and like so little to it in the perspective of I used to think, oh, is it safe to do 2 5K runs in a single day, right? Kind of thing. That's the questions I was asking, right? Little did I know. And so progressed to that, and then I got the bug for it. So we started doing trail running because she loves trails, and that's how we blossomed more into that together. And then I'm like, oh well, maybe I'll try a half marathon, right? And after that, naturally you think, okay, well, next thing to train for is a marathon, and then naturally next thing to beating myself, I'm very competitive to myself, is I'll do an ultra. And also
was
a
this
little bit
all with
competitive.
Carla as well, or were you going off on your own with
So
these distances at this point?
so originally it was all with Carla, and then she didn't get as intense as I did. So yeah, I guess then, I kind of started doing more and more and more than she did. And she was more just enjoyed it, and it became too much of a slog for her, and she didn't have that same passion. But for me, it was kind of like, no. But the reason why the running is so important to me is because I do it more for the mental side. It's especially when I was building my business, and when I was working for consulting, it was a way to switch off. It was a way to escape all that. And this will sound disgusting to some people, but my favorite run is to go do 21 kilometers or a half marathon. Like, I was doing 2 of those a month just for fun. Like, just in my in my local area, I would do like 4 or 5 loops of 5K. Just, that's fine, like, because I just got into a trance. I loved it. And then I got to the point where I was doing a bit more training for ultras or whatever, and I would go find a nice flat spot, and Carla would ride, and I'd just run and just get into that trance where you can switch off, listen to music, listen to audiobooks, and like during my pandemic, I was training for my second marathon, and we went into lockdown, and they said you're not allowed to go 5K radius from your home. And I was like, well, that's crap.
Wow.
And then I'm like, but that's okay. I can make that work. But then it got worse. Then they said, you're not allowed to be outside for more than 2 hours. And I'm like, well, I can't do a marathon in 2 hours. So what I ended up doing to beat that, and when I say outside, you weren't allowed to be outside your property. So I ended up doing my second marathon. I did 2 hours in the 5K radius, and I did the second half of it in a 470-meter loop in my backyard.
What? It's a half a kilometer loop. What?
Yeah, and that was crazy.
God.
That thing broke me. Like even now thinking about it, like I as soon as I finished, I just broke into tears. But I did it, and I bet my original marathon time as well. By only 4 minutes or something, but I bet it.
Yes.
And I've got the video on my YouTube channel, that's there. If you go,
go find it.
Backyard marathon or whatever. And after that I realized, well, if I can do this, I'll go do an ultra. And Carla did her ultra first before me, which she's inspired me to do that.
Wow.
And mate, she's a pocket rocket. She did the 52K in 7.5 hours. Which was just wild, absolutely
on trails, I assume, right? There's
trails,
always trails.
Trails.
Wow.
And so then I'm like, stuff it, I'm going to do one. So I signed up and did one with her the second time, and I think we did must have been 9 hours together. And she did that with a stuffed ankle. She's way stronger than me.
Wow.
And she was told not to do it, and because of that she's had an injury since, so she probably shouldn't have, but no regrets for her. And then after that I'm like, okay, well now it's time for me to put the big boy pants on and do one by myself. So I did one 2 years ago, and I did that in, I think I did it in under, it must be about 9.5 hours. And that thing is gnarly. It breaks you, but the thing is, it's the best hate-love relationship you have, because you go through it, you're loving it, and then all of a sudden you're hating it, and then you're loving it, and then you're hating it, and then you get to the end, and then you realize straight away, it's no, I'm doing it again. It's
no, I get
and so
that.
I signed up again, and unfortunately then I got a back injury and also some issues with my heel, so it was kind of they said, no, stop, and I haven't ran for a year. So really want to get back into it, because it's, I love it so much. I just love it more so to be able to get out and escape. But I tend to just, surprise, when I do things, I kind of do everything pretty full on. I don't just,
I get that. I love that.
I've got to be willing to commit back to that and deal with that up and down again, because I was pretty frustrated that I had to cancel my half marathon. I had to cancel my other run. I had to cancel my my ultra and all that. So I'm keen to get back out there and do it again. I'm not done, and I need to, because I'm gaining weight and I'm neglecting other exercises because I don't enjoy it as much. So but no, that's me. I love it. If people say, oh, what do you do in your free time? I would normally say, oh, I like to do a lot of running, and they'll be like, yeah, you're weird. But it's great. You know it. I see you do your stuff and you talk about it. It's so good.
My last question on running for you, I guess, when you sign up for a distance that's that long, you almost have to expect it's going to get hard. Like you said, it's ups and downs. So when it gets hard, what do? Do you have a mantra? Do you have things you think about? Do you distract yourself? Do you lean into it? What's your strategy?
So there's two components to this. So when I was doing it for weight loss, it was some pretty deep, dark talking to myself, really, putting yourself down to say, no, you're better than this, you're not the fatty you are, and really getting deep in facing your demons in that sense. After that, so that was that. That's not long distance stuff. That's me just getting over the hurdle of get out there and suck it up. But when it comes to the long stuff, I've done, my half marathons are my easiest runs, because I'm able to look at them from a long term perspective. Like, you're able to get it, the first 7K is rough. You find your groove, whatever. But then once you get the groove, it's just cruise, like most of the time. So I find sometimes the shorter runs are harder than the longer runs because it's a mental thing that you can't get locked in. But no, look, not to say that every half marathon's easy, but the way I look at it, when it gets to those deeper ones, which get to closer like post 25K, it's 25 to 36 to 40, those ones, you got to have a game plan of how you deal with it. And it comes back to, why am I doing it? You're having conversations with yourself. And then you're reminding, why you're doing it. And it's because you want to be a better version of yourself. With complementary, I have music or I have an audio book. When I did my actual marathon, my first marathon, actually more so it was for my second marathon, the one that I had to do around my property. I had a real deep schedule in terms of like, this is when I'm going to have certain types of music, because I know when I have the biggest dip, right? And it's usually around that 32 plus, because that's the least amount of times I've ran that distance. So that's when I need to have, leave all that hype up music, the stuff that gets me sentimental, emotional, and, makes me think of all the good times. That's when you want to like absolutely smash it, right? So for the second marathon, like my tip was, because it was going to be a bit of a crazy journey, because it wasn't in normal running conditions. Like, I listened to The Alchemist for the first time, and I worked out that The Alchemist was going to get me for the first, literally, I think it worked out because I usually listen to 1.2, 1.5 times. It worked out to be about, I think I finished it at about 3 hours or 3 hours 20 or something. And my marathon, I was aiming for sub 4:40, 4 hours and 40 minutes.
Wow,
so I knew that,
that's
okay,
great,
after
man.
that, I had a playlist of music, to knowing that, okay, then I have my normal playlist when I would normally do like a half marathon, right? Because then by the time I get into the groove, the songs that I needed would kind of pop up naturally, rather than me having to change them, right? I had to change them anyway because I needed some of that stuff earlier. But yeah, so it comes to more mental, but I think it really depends on why you're running. Like, if you're running because it's that personal better version of yourself, and I've documented all of this before I was reselling, I was documenting all my running journey, and that stuff, like, it's pretty boring for a lot of people, but to me, it's like, if you go watch one of those and you see the excitement of me finishing a long run, and you literally feel like I felt like I was the best person in the world, nothing else matters, just doing a training run, right? Because you got out and you got it done. Like, we're talking like 16 to 20 week training plans. We're doing
Dude,
100K or
wow.
50K to 100K a week, and you're showing up, right? And I think that's probably where my resilience comes in the business, because I know what it's like to tough it out, right? Like, I'm happy to play
Yeah,
the long game. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? it's
absolutely, man.
But to finish that, it's like the most exciting part that I get excited for any run is that final, like, 1K, right? That 1K, and I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. That 1K, you just give it everything you've got. You bring it home, you finish strong, even if you feel like a suck, like, that you've got nothing left. I always make sure I leave something for that, because you come back and you do yourself what you deserve, to come in strong. And I chase that adrenaline rush, like, nothing else beats it. Nothing else beats
There's
it.
something so watching people give their all, it makes me emotional. I always cry
Oh
watching
yeah.
the Olympics like that. I get it, man. And I always know if I'm running and I'm crying thinking about someone, sometimes I'm just like
Yeah.
feeling so emotional and raw.
Yeah.
I know that's going to be a good run, because if you can tap into that
Yep.
emotional side as well, there's
Oh
so much
yeah.
strength to be found there.
I've cried
So
more running than I have not running. So yeah.
yeah, I get that, man. And thankfully, with all the sweat, it's like I almost feel like I'm not even embarrassed. Like, who's gonna know? I'm already red faced and wet, so
Yeah,
like, who's gonna
it
know?
blends in. Yeah. It's only when
That's so
yeah,
great,
yeah,
man.
it's good. It's good stuff. I love it. I love it.
Well, what a great talk, man. Thank you so much for joining me on this. I
Oh,
always
thank
I
you.
feel so I'm just always smiling after listening to your YouTube videos, and I just feel like so happy that we get to connect like this. And man, I'm happy we got to have this conversation, man. So is there anything else you want to
Dude,
leave
I'm
the audience
honored.
with? Or?
Um, Look, I think, it's everything that I say in my videos. It's like, if you know what you want, right? You got to lock down, know what you want, right? Understand why you're doing it. What's the purpose? What's the intention there? And then as you go progress, it's all about asking yourself, what's one thing that I can do today that's going to get me closer to where I want to be? But at the same time, if you have a decision, And this doesn't have to be for reselling. This is for anything, right? It's like, you have a decision and you're not sure about it. You got to ask yourself, because you know what you want and why you're doing it. It's like, well, if I do this, does this get me closer to where I want to be? Whether it's one day closer, is it going to get me closer to the thing that I want to be doing 20 years from now, or whatever? And then that gives you that answer, right? And it's, you don't compromise on that, right? If you know, now this is where it's going to lead me to that, right? And if you're not sure if it's going to lead you to that, it's probably a no, because you can't attain the two together, right? That's what I'll leave you with. Yeah.
Oh man, bro, your attitude is infectious. Your positivity, man, I love it. I
Thanks, man.
appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for taking the time, and hope to do this again one day, maybe, man.
Yeah,
I
100%,
loved it.
man.
So
100%.
awesome, awesome. Well, I'm Joe. This
Thank
is
you.
Chris. Yeah, thanks for joining us, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Peace.